Hi there, it's January, it's a nice sunny day, and I'm at the education campus today, what we call a campus. I don't know if you can see here, but I had to sign in today, which involved taking a photo and printing a pass and whatnot. Never had to do that before. So they like to have lots of fences and things these days. Anyway, I'm doing a bit of tree maintenance, and I wanted to talk about some Wassail cultural thing. So it's January, and that's a time in cider culture when you do Wassails, and there's always kind of articles in the media, and they're not normally written by people involved in actual cider culture. Um, so they can be like, there's a lot of like, I don't know, journalists like stories that are going to like interest the readers, I suppose, and they don't necessarily comprehend the meaning behind things. So I wanted to talk about that today, and it should interest those of you who are interested in living foods, soil fertility, meat substitutes, um, just like tree care in general, as well as like cider making and like tree care, orchard maintenance, I suppose you might call it. So so let's just talk about cider making for a second. Well, let's just talk about this tree first. So this tree moved from another location, and it was quite old when I moved it. So it's really struggled. And when it got dug up, like there was a lot of damage to the roots, so it needs a lot of care and attention. And so you can see that I've weeded around it and put a mulch here, which is underneath the wood chip. There's some hedge trimmings, basically. So this time of year, of course, the trees don't have any leaves on, so you can chop out anything that's dead, diseased, or damaged, unlikely to be productive. And you can see in this tree, there's a lot of the energy is all sort of crammed up in the tips. So it's what's happening is it's only producing quite small leaves, and the growth each year is very limited. On younger, more healthy trees, the new growth is sort of several inches each year, whereas on this it's quite small. But hopefully it'll improve. I did notice some young growth, down here. Can you see these shoots? They've got a bit more vigour to them, so we'll see what they do. So I want to give this tree a bit of a health boost, and so let's just talk about cider making now. So I mean like proper cider making, not like apple flavoured stuff. I mean like actually pressing apples and fermenting the juice. So you get the apples fall in the autumn. You press the apples and you get juice, and then the juice ferments, and it takes time to ferment. Now you can easily make a cider in time for Christmas, which I'm sure a lot of people do, but really for most cider makers, the bulk of the cider they want to make is for like the spring and the summer. That's when people tend to like to drink cider. So really what they're trying to do is not the fastest fermentation possible. They want a long, slow, consistent fermentation. And so normally the way to do that is like cooler temperatures. So it's bordering on like cellaring here. So anyway, what happens is the clear part of the cider separates and you get a sediment at the bottom, and the yeast does something called flocculation. So the yeast that is consuming the sugars in the juice and other nutrients, it tends to cluster together or flocculate, and then when it gets to a certain size, that tends to like sink to the bottom. So you get what's called dregs or a sediment. And so you do a process called racking, which is where you take the clear cider off the dregs, and you do that kind of, normally you do that like progressively, depending what kind of, there are different reasons why you might do different things. So yeah, anyway, just somebody watching me over there, I don't know what they want. Anyway, yeah, so where was I? Yeah, so what this means is you're left with a lot of dregs, and it's like, what do I do with the dregs? And what are the dregs? Well, the dregs, I've got some here. These are, you can see it's very active. So that's got all the active yeast, and the yeast tends to sort of draw all the nutrients and minerals towards itself. And also when it's cold, things fall out of suspension, so the kind of particles that are going to make a cider cloudy tend to settle at the bottom. So the question is, what do you do with all this? Well, there are some commercial products. So in the UK, we've got something called Marmite, which is a commercial brand. It's often sold as yeast extract. But in other countries, it's known as Vegemite. In Europe, generally, it's known as Vegemite. And so it's basically, in its most basic form, it's yeast that's preserved with salt. And I think this product goes back a long way, actually. So I think that what used to happen would be in the middle of the winter, when people were struggling for food or people got ill, like poor people, they weren't in great housing or whatever. They got ill, and a cheap and available food would have been yeast spread on bread or toast. And it's funny how, like, if you are down in the dumps and you have got a cold, often what do you crave? Well, a bit of dry toast with some Vegemite on it. It's kind of like salty. It's got lots of B vitamins in it, so it's supposed to be good for like brain development and nerves and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's obviously, I think that's what they did in the past, was people that were really struggling for food would get whatever they could. And but anyway, the cider maker would probably have more than he knew what to do with this, more even than he could give to the poorer labourers and what have you. Years ago, traders would go from farm to farm, so you'd get what are called peddlers peddling their trade, and you get things like people shoeing horses and coopers fixing barrels and wood turners making spokes for carts and people sharpening tools, all this kind of stuff. And they would, if they weren't paid directly, they would get food from the farm. And they'd have like these little ceremonies. And yeah, so the cider maker would have more of this than he knew what to do with. And a good use for it actually is to put around the tree. So it's got a lot of all the nutrients that the tree is short of. It's kind of, naturally in the wild, a fruit tree would drop its fruit, and a lot of it would be taken away by, birds and small mammals and things. But a lot of it would stay underneath the tree, and that would, the worms and the fauna on the surface would gradually draw it into the soil. So I think, so one of the Wassail traditions is to put cider around the tree. But I think that originally it would have been dregs. And also the timing is very auspicious. So, as I say, in autumn you press your fruit, and it's about now where you've got like maximum kind of dregs. And the well-to-do folk would be having their Christmas feasts and what have you. And towards the end of those feasts, they would give the leftovers to the labourers and what have you. So it's very auspicious that wassailing is normally done on the 12th night, so that's the last night of Christmas. So once all the landowners have had their fill of celebration, then they pass on the leftovers to the labourers. I mean, maybe the labourers joined in with the celebrations as well, but it was just, so I think that's some of the origins of it. And so a wassail tradition is to pour cider around the oldest or the most productive tree. Now, if you think about that, why would you do something to the oldest tree? Well, maybe you want to reinvigorate that tree and keep it going. Or why would you do that to your most productive tree? Well, maybe it wasn't your most productive tree. Maybe it became your most productive tree because you were feeding it. Or maybe it was the apples you liked the most, the apples that were best for cider. And so you fed it. And also you're building up a sort of cache of the kind of yeasts that do well and that you want, so that the following year the apples that are produced are full of the good stuff that you want. So I hope I've kind of explained that. So what I'm going to do anyway is just pour these dregs on top of this mulch that I've made. And it's, as I say, this is really active. You can hear that now. And that will start to break down everything that's there. And also it's very slightly acidic, so weeds like nettles and thistles and what have you don't really care for it, so it helps to control them. So I mean, I just wanted to talk about a few of the other wassail traditions. So there's hanging toast in the tree, toast and cider in the tree sometimes, and raising a toast, which of course is just drinking to the health of the tree. So you can imagine, like, if people who became ill in the winter, if they were fed with toast and yeast extract or a yeast-based product when they got ill, maybe they would transfer that idea to the tree and say, well, look, this helped me get better. Maybe, if we want this tree to be really good, we'll give some to the tree. And we've got more of it than we need, so, it doesn't really do any harm. And then, of course, you get, like, the birds, like the robins and what have you, of course, they appreciate a bit of toast and a bit of yeast in that. And of course, as things are breaking down around the tree, if you sped up the natural processes under the tree of decomposition and then creation of new fertile soil, then you're going to get all the kind of fauna that's associated with that. So you're going to get the worms, you're going to get the beetles and the birds and all the little tiny things that you can't see. So yeah, anyway, so I think I've covered most things. I mean, there are lots of Wassail traditions. Things like, say, like damaging the tree. Maybe you hear about people firing shotguns into the trees, or even like horsewhipping a tree. So, I mean, what happens with a tree is where the bark gets damaged, it tends to put out shoots. So there's like a stress response, and you'll get what are called water shoots coming out from. If a branch snaps off, you'll get water shoots down below where the break is. So by whipping a tree, for example, on a particular side, you can stimulate growth. But yeah, I think these are all explanations as to why an orchard person might be out this time of year, pouring things around the tree, doing things to the tree, chopping bits off the tree. Maybe they put protection around the base of the tree to keep things like sheep or deer off. And what's happened is, as these rituals have kind of built up, a lot of it is kind of pseudo-religious. So as sort of Christianity and what have you came in, they ascribe certain like semi-pseudo-religious things to what is just, basically agriculture. So yeah, I thought I'd give my little explanation, and and so I'm just going to wish this tree good health and give it a little drink. Okay, see you later.